I gotta chime in on this gate program because I didn't even remember it until I saw a picture. Now, yes, I'm in my pajamas. I just woke up a couple hours ago, enjoying my coffee before I go to work tonight. That's why I'm still in my PJs. But when it comes to this program, apparently it was like the late 80s, early 90s babies, and I was born in 93. But what's so interesting about all of this is I don't even remember, but I moved at 8 years old, and I have memory after I moved. When I saw that picture of the headphones, the noises started coming through. Like I remembered the noises. But another thing that I remember at school, because I had an incident where I got stabbed with a pencil in my thigh. I remember that. And I also remember getting something done to my eyes. My mother bringing me to the school. And I remember like walking into the classroom, but prior to me getting out of the car, I was telling my mother I couldn't see, like things were blurry, and I had a test to take. I can't remember the test, but I just remember going to take a test with blurred vision because whatever was just done to my eyes. The crazy part about it is at 32 years old, I still have good vision. Like, I don't have any eye problems besides at night, like with the lights and whatnot. I have all these memories, random memories as a little girl running around with the kids on my street. The one neighbor, they packed the microwave full of like breads and whatnot. The neighbor across the street, I remember when a hurricane hit, my dad running out and going to get them in the middle of the eye because their dad was a lineman. I remember playing in the canals. I remember walking up to McDonald's. And this was all before I was 8 years old. But I don't remember the school. I remember walking home on like the half days and the older kids coming and picking us up. Going to the gas station and getting like those candy cigarette thingies. Like I remember that. The older kids meaning the older siblings to us. Like my older sibling, one of my neighbor, his older sibling. They would come and meet us and we would all, walk home. But I have more of a memory once we moved when I was 8. Like I met my best friend when I was 8 years old at the pool before she even moved into the house of the neighborhood. I remember the elementary school I went to and everything. The middle school, all of it. But prior, it's just funny because it's like after I moved, I was no longer in the program. The timing behind it, you know what I mean? But let me get into this a little deeper. What if I told you that the folks that were behind it all understood that there was a prophecy? I mean, you can read about it. But in that prophecy, many are called and few are chosen. These people behind the scenes, how do you think they maintain power? It's all about the energy. They never taught us about energy because they siphoned it. And these folks understood this prophecy, and they understood that it was in our lifetime. They understood that that generation that they were observing, many are called, but few are chosen, right? What do you think they were after? What do you think they were looking for? They were trying to see who had the supernatural powers that the chosen ones have. Supernatural abilities. Chosen ones are old souls, if not ancient souls. So they carry certain things, DNA, codes, etc. What do you think they were looking for? Because they knew that a prophecy would be fulfilled. And they were trying to keep their power. They were trying to stay in power. Because they knew their power would be taken back the moment the chosen ones call all their energy back. And then you look at the world we live in, 20 years later, because of the late 80s, early 90s babies. Who's going to be the leaders of the new world? I'm not talking the political new world that people are gung-ho about. I'm talking about the one that's in prophecy. I'm not talking about the new world where the ones are trying to keep the power of. I'm talking about the chosen ones calling in the new world. Using their supernatural abilities. Isn't it a coincidence that all of a sudden we're talking about it? All of a sudden it's coming to the forefront? Do you think the timing behind that is a coincidence? Once you understand there's no such thing as a coincidence, it makes more sense. Why do you think that mass spiritual awakening is happening? Because the chosen ones have been behind closed doors it goes so much deeper than what most can comprehend. And I cannot elaborate. I can get into it a little bit more, but once you actually look at the timing of it all, and you understand the age of which these folks are becoming, and that the generations above us are going to need to sit down because we're not part of that world no more. We're changing the frequency. That's what the chosen ones do. It all starts to make more sense if you have spiritual eyes to see. And I just find it quite interesting on my own personal experience, the timing behind when I moved, how my memory was different. Like, I remember sitting underneath the huge tree in my house having picnics. I remember going to my mother's best friend's house for NASCAR and all these things and playing with, all the other kids. Having a crush. I remember my personal life, but when it comes to going to school where they occupy your time for how many hours a day, the memory is just not quite there. But the moment I saw them headphones, I literally was hearing the sounds of when I was younger. flashbacks were just shoo, shoo, shoo. And then I was getting the downloads of what I just elaborated a little bit to you regarding the chosen ones, the timing behind it, prophecy being fulfilled, the ones that are in power trying to hold their power. You got to understand, these folks understood things that they hid from the mass majority, from the public. The reason why is because that number, chosen ones, is so small. If they can pinpoint and do what they do behind closed doors, not for the greater good, they can keep their power, their control. They understood that the chosen ones are way more powerful than they will ever be. And the only way that they can have or feel or embrace any type of supernatural power or the energy of the chosen ones is doing what they've done for a long time. But if you understood prophecy was going to be fulfilled in our lifetime, it makes a lot of sense. And I mean, it seems like it was well coordinated. I'm not going to reach out to my parents and talk to them about it, so and I always wondered why I couldn't remember much of my childhood. You know, like bits and pieces. I remember jumping on the trampoline with a bunch of us, people getting hurt. I remember my sibling stepping on a nail through her shoe. You know, like random stuff. But when it comes to school, I can't even remember what it looked like. But I never forgot that one day I had stuff going on in my eyes going to take a test. And I think something inside me knew something wasn't right, so it always stuck with me. But when I saw that picture of them headphones, it connected that dot. I don't know why, and I don't know how, but I understood that it was associated with each other in my being. And yeah, I hear these other stories about languages, Morse code. I feel like Morse code was part of it for me, but I just really, really, really remember those headphones. Like that was the main thing for me. And for me to sit there and remember those sounds all these years later, just popping up in my head, It's just starting to make sense. Whoever done started this, whoever done leaked it and was like, anybody remember this? Shout out to you. Because I didn't remember it. But it's starting to make a lot of sense. I mean, what do you think? When you look at the generations, it makes so much sense. Because the generations above the ones that went through this program, their mindsets, their hearts, their confinement to religion or whatever it is that keeps them stepping outside of themselves, that's all I see. But when you look at our generation, why is it the older generation doesn't understand our thinking? Why is it that so many of us think outside the box? Why is it so many of us never understood this growing up? Because I sure as heck didn't. I looked at the boomers like, why y'all look so miserable? You're working for a retirement that you're not sure you're going to get. And then you see so many unhappy households. Oh, when they turn 18, we're getting a divorce. Because everything was so embedded in a system that wasn't intended. A system that was an illusion. That's why the awakening is happening the way it is. There's certain ones of the older generations that are the dime a dozens that have the spiritual eyes and mentorship. But it's very few when you compare it to the generation we're talking about right now. And then you look at the generation underneath us, and people may say they're lost and confused, or they're just going through all the emotions. They're going through subconsciously trying to understand their current life after so many reincarnations. Have you thought about it that way? You see the scales of over feminine, over masculine, but then you see the scales starting to try to balance itself out. We're going into a feminine era. The divine, feminine, it's not a masculine, and masculines, men, have the feminine in them as well. But them not being tapped into it is unhealthy, just like a female not tapped into her masculine. Everybody's balance is different. But when you look at it on different levels, through spirituality, through astrology, because you can talk about the 8-year cycle last year, and that wraps up karma. Now we're in the 9-year cycle, which I don't have notes and everything but when you get into it, it makes sense. When you take a step back and you don't have worldly eyes, the timing behind that program, and these years later, it's just starting to connect the dots more. But what do you think? I think it's very interesting in the times we live in. depending how you want to look at it, this is the history of all histories. You feel me? The prophecy that has to be fulfilled. You can look at that prophecy how you want, but that's besides the point right now. Get the gist of what I'm saying when it comes to prophecy and chosen ones. And then you look at that program. And then you look at the last administration and how those 4 years went. And then all of a sudden, what's done in the dark has to come to light eventually. And we see so much of it happening on multiple spectrums, multiple scales, whichever category. I mean, we can get down to the weather and these storms and whatnot, and then what's coming up. You're finding all this stuff that was buried under, that these storms are bringing to the surface. It gets so deep. But I'm going to try and stay on track and keep it on this GATE program. And just show my perspective, I guess. Because I've never understood all of this growing up. It never made sense to me. I tried to, do what the world says and fit in and blase. Just for years later, me to understand, and for me to realize the revelations I've gotten and downloads I've gotten just to be fulfilled years later. And if you look at United States of America as Babylon, where you think, and then you think about the chosen ones, and then you think about this program. I mean, we can get into the rabbit hole, but this is just me showing you a rabbit. I don't know. But what do you think? I mean, does this make sense? You understand what I'm even saying? Let me know.